All right, look at that
Check
background.
that out. That's my new toy.
That's awesome. I have to get taller now for that.
Try to make it a little more professional for my videos.
I love it. I love it. It looks
Yeah.
good.
Thank you. Thank you.
How are you doing?
Good, good. I heard you singing a minute ago. Nice.
Trying to entertain. I was like, I need like background music, but
Yeah, absolutely. So,
hey, Todd. So people are just hopping on. So I got bamboozled, I guess, the longest Q&A I've ever had in my entire life. So normally after Perform Better Talks, there's 15 minutes in between each speaker, and people will find us in the hall or whatever and ask us questions and like line up. Instead, this year we did everything on Zoom, and I think there's over 75 questions that I had, and it took about a good 50 minutes, but there was a big chunk of them that were on women and menopause and testosterone. And I felt, you know what, since we did a TRT Tuesday on women already, we should probably do another one because so many people don't see these. So we'll get right into it. And I want to start off with, all right, why do so many gynecologists or OBGYNs tell women that hormone replacement for them is going to cause cancer? Number one. And number two, why do they very, very, very rarely include testosterone in their protocols?
yeah, those are great points. I think, unfortunately, all hormones kind of fell out of favor. Women were on it for decades, right? And with proven track record. And then back in 2002, there was a study, the Women's Health Initiative, which scared women and gynecologists around the world to, oh my God, hormones are going to cause cancer and you're going to die and all these things. And of course, later they found out that when they reanalyzed the numbers, that it was a terribly flawed study, and that numbers actually looked pretty darn good, especially when you took out the synthetic hormones, which is like Prempro and Premarin and things like that, which is made out of horse's urine. So gross. So the bioidentical hormones, dozens and dozens of studies, nothing's ever been proven to cause cancer. If anything, they're protective of breast cancer, protective against osteoporosis, protective against heart disease, and women, flat out, you're going to live longer if you supplement with hormones. That's mainly like estrogen and progesterone, but testosterone too has been, it's been kind of like, I don't want to say if it's just bro science or just bad stigma or what, but like it's just the guy's hormone. It just was kind of given short shrift, but fortunately, delved into that and done a lot more studies on that and showing the benefits. Well, same thing with, it's kind of synergistic with estrogen in terms of protecting against breast cancer, building strong bones so you don't fall and break a hip and get out from osteoporosis, improving your quality of life, and doing many, many other things, lowering inflammation. You know, right now everybody's worried about the inflammation from COVID, right? I mean, one of the things you could do is optimize your hormones because you're going to reduce your anti-inflammatories, cytokines and enzymes floating around your body with optimal hormone therapy. So I think it's starting to come around. I think more and more women are getting in tune with testosterone as well and how safe it truly is. I mean, there's physicians and clinics that are actually giving testosterone to women with cancer and treating cancer with testosterone. So it's
similar to guys.
yeah, it's done like a complete 180 degrees turn, which is awesome. It's cool to see that. So it's coming, but in the meantime, you're gonna have to, work with people like us who are a little more up on the current current numbers. And there's nothing to be scared of. It's extremely safe, and if you do it right, there's the chance of side effects is extremely low. So
Yeah, and I mean that's why, like, I have so many women that are like, oh well, even if they do get hormone testing, their physician's like, well, it doesn't really matter the results anyway because all HRT causes cancer, and this very dismissive response. And I tell people then it's time to find another doctor. It's just too often that they're being told all these lies or things that they know it just doesn't sit right with them. And so that's a huge commonality I see with a lot of women, or that they have the BRCA gene or they have it in their family and therefore they should not even approach going on estrogen or anything.
right, absolutely, yeah. It's that thing called confirmation bias. You get something in your head, you can't unlearn it. But think how in the world of medicine for the longest time it was low fat. You had to eat low fat because fat's bad for you, and doctors and nurses and couldn't get it out of their heads. And now we've learned that, whoops, we messed up. But so it's hard when it's just like anything. Like if you're telling someone, okay, you got to do the deadlift, and you finally learn a new way, you're a little hesitant to let it go. And it's almost like you're admitting you're wrong, but there's nothing wrong with that. We're always learning and improving. So, and I think that's what these doctors, unfortunately, they're stuck in that confirmation bias. They can't unlearn bad data, even when they're confronted with tons of new data for some reason. I don't know. It's hard, but yeah, if someone's telling you that, it's time to find someone new for sure.
Can you go over why women in perimenopause, and perimenopause is somebody who is nearing menopause, maybe it could be actually somebody my age, 29, but you know, in their 30s, even 40s, approaching menopause, or women in menopause, and why they would want testosterone in their protocol, even though testosterone might sometimes be a little bit higher in women who are actually in menopause.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, as women go through perimenopause, we call that kind of no man's land, right? Because it's this nebulous area that, you know, some things are still working, some things are starting not to. But with women, progesterone and testosterone are the first two hormones that start dropping. And it can be, yeah, like you said, in as early as your 30s and 40s, depending on your lifestyle, genetics, how you eat, how you work out, you know, what's going on, if you lived a bad life or if you had premature had surgery, had your ovaries, and had a hysterectomy at an early age, things like that. So, but those are the first two to drop. So, those are therefore the first two that should be replaced to get you back to where you need to be. And once again, testosterone can actually help with some of those perimenopausal symptoms. Think about when women their periods start getting irregular, the PMS symptoms get kind of wonky, and then they're not sleeping. They're waking up at night with maybe eventually they start getting hot flashes and night sweats. So but they're still making a lot of estrogen because they're not quite to menopause. Well, what do? Well, progesterone helps, and testosterone actually helps. And some women just like the testosterone because it can actually eliminate a lot of those symptoms. Plus, they benefit with their body composition and boosting their libido and their energy levels and all these things too. So it's kind of a win-win. But when you put those two together, you know, very beneficial. Not just for quality of life, but symptoms and for overall health too. So those are the first two to replace. Then once they go through menopause, eventually they'll need other things too, like estradiol and things like that. But
And there's like, what percentage of women that you treat, you would say, who are not perimenopausal, who maybe, or I guess they could be perimenopausal, or like around my age and younger, who are on testosterone versus not, just because they have low testosterone due to environment and lifestyle factors?
yeah, I'd say most of my perimenopausal women, actually. I mean, I've got a lot that are pure blood menopausal, or I have a handful, several women that have had a hysterectomy at a very early age, which is they definitely need help because studies have shown that they're at risk for a lot of diseases and early death, and if they don't get their hormones replaced because of getting that taken out prematurely. But my younger patients, yeah, those are the ones that we found either symptoms or low levels, or typically both, of testosterone and some of the other, even though everything else is okay, that might be one of the ones that's kind of low. So yeah, I'd say at least half of my younger women have either had symptoms or low levels or both typically, and then we discuss replacing and optimizing them, and they've been doing quite well. So similar to your case, I guess, too, right?
Yeah, it's like, dude, I'm perfect. No kidding.
Yeah.
But like, I do everything I can, you know, and sometimes you need that supplement, but they're just like with the men, there's the fear of adding that in. It's funny because like women being on estrogen and progesterone, like it is so normal and accepted, and they're used to hearing about that. But God forbid testosterone for women,
Right.
it's like you said, to them, a very foreign thing. And I know, you know, a lot of the women who are fearful of the breast cancer stuff, can you just kind of touch on, like, if someone says, well, I have the BRCA gene, or I had breast cancer, why it would still be okay for them to explore any type of HRT?
Oh, definitely. You know, if they've been treated, typically they're in the clear. If they have BRCA, same thing. If they've been BRCA, but all the, you know, mammograms, everything's normal, they don't have active cancer, totally safe for hormone therapy. Obviously, you know, you can discuss that with your gynecologist, except if needed, or if you're seeing an oncologist. But again, just the gene itself doesn't indicate that you're going to have it. If you modify your lifestyle and you're getting your screening exams, et cetera, it can be very safe. Especially with testosterone, a lot of women, even with, as we talked about earlier, there's women who actually have cancer or recent cancer, and they're actually being treated with testosterone, not just to kill the cancer cells, but to improve their symptoms that they've had from the therapies they're getting. You know, so
Yeah.
overall, progesterone has always been known to be safe. Testosterone very safe. The one, I think, estrogen is probably the most contentious. So if someone has a positive receptor and they had a cancer and it's positive estrogen receptor, that gets a little tricky, but there are ways to treat that as well. But the other two, extremely safe, and a lot of more physicians, I think, are getting in the know of being comfortable with that. So yeah,
And yeah. And a lot of this too, very individualized. So I know, like, a lot of the questions that I got, you guys were asking, if you were attending the talk, was, you know, what carbs do I eat during menopause? What carbs do I eat at this point and stuff? And these are all things that are kind of you know, not a big rock to focus on. Everyone still has to focus on their lifestyle factors, which are you moving enough? Are you sleeping enough? Obviously, all these hormones can help with that. That's one of the biggest things, is when your hormones are optimized,
Right.
that it allows you to live a better lifestyle. And one of the points I make is that in order to lose body fat, yes, we need a calorie deficit. However, we need hormonal balance too, because then if we don't have one or the other, we're not going to lose a lot of fat.
Yeah, and I think with testosterone, it's similar. I think it's like the hormone equivalent of strength training, right? I think a lot of women think of the bro science and the stigma from back in the 80s and stuff. It's like, well, if I lift weights, I'm going to get big, or if I do testosterone, I'm going to grow a beard and I'm going to lower my voice and I'm going to get, big muscles. And it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You abuse anything, of course, but again, similar with men, if you're dosed properly and you're followed properly by someone who knows what they're doing, I've never had any problems with side effects, and they're not turning into Arnold Schwarzeneggers and growing a beard. It's just not happening. So ladies, don't be afraid of that. I don't know if anybody's watching, if you have any other concerns or questions about it, but let us know.
Yeah, definitely, guys, ask questions. Aram's asked the question, how detrimental is perimenopause to a female trying to lose visceral fat and is checking off a lot of the lifestyle boxes? So assuming she's doing everything right because he's coaching her lifestyle-wise, how detrimental is the perimenopause for someone wanting to lose visceral fat only?
Yeah, it's something. It's more or less. It's not so that it's detrimental, but you're being proactive, because as women go through perimenopause into menopause, of course, everybody's probably read about a lot of women tend to gain weight statistically, and they used to be thinking, oh, it's because of the hormones. Well, it does have something to do with it, but typically it's decrease in activity and changes in appetite and other things that go along with the menopausal transition. But hormones play an integral part of that. So it's about being proactive, because yes, unfortunately, a lot of women, as they go through perimenopause and menopause, we will start to develop that visceral fat, and which of course can be very dangerous from a health perspective, because that visceral fat is the dangerous kind. It secretes a lot of inflammatory cytokines or chemicals in the body, can predispose you to diabetes and high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease, etc. So you want to nip it in the bud as quickly as possible. And hormone optimization is just one way to do it on top of lifestyle. I see it all the time. Women are like, man, I'm eating clean, I'm working out, I'm sleeping, I'm doing everything right, but I'm still getting this little pooch around here, or I'm getting a little bit of a belly, or I see it all the time. Same with my men. Well, that's part of it. So in terms of being detrimental, yeah, definitely. So that's not something you want to wait or after, which we can do, but catch it early. At least go get your baseline lab work done, get a baseline evaluation, see where you're at. And if you're having symptoms, then start treating it right now while you can, because then you'll prevent that. And it's always easier, just like working out, it's always easier to start before you're completely out of shape, rather than wait until the train's too far down the tracks, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And then I also want to broach, I know this could also be another Testosterone Tuesday discussion in and of itself, but birth control. My go-to knee-jerk response to this, because I know what it does to women and I know all the different types and what they do to women, but I always tell people they have to discuss it with their physician, because that is legally the right thing to do. Now that we have a physician here, so if you can please give your opinion as to, I guess, a shortened version of what the downside is to a lot of these birth controls that we're now learning 30 years later with all the research coming out.
Yeah, that's a whole topic in and of itself, but you're right. But fortunately, the good and the bad is, as always, it depends, right? Because I'm not your physician, but everybody's different. But that being said, a lot of the synthetic birth control pills, there's a time and a place for them for sure, and there's definitely a clinical indication. Otherwise, they wouldn't be used. But sometimes they're used a little too much, kind of like everybody's being put on statins just because, right? It's for high cholesterol. Sometimes it's right, but oftentimes it's not. Same with the birth control pills. You get a little bit of an irregular bleed or just whatever, and let's just put you on birth control pills. So sometimes there's a better fix for it, and that may be fixing an underlying issue or a food allergy or a diet change or whatever, or just bioidentical hormones with like progesterone, and you may have to do another birth control method. So, but the synthetic hormones, just like a lot of the synthetic, like Premarin and Prempro, etc., there's a risk of some side effects because they are synthetic. They do cause some inflammation, and they can downregulate some things internally a little excessively, especially for a very long time. So we're seeing that a lot of women who've been on these birth control pills for decades, later on, they're having some issues with whether it's fertility or irregular menstrual cycles or cysts on their ovaries or, God forbid, cancers or whatever, inflammation, visceral body fat, things like this. And it can definitely wreak some havoc on your body. So if it's something you absolutely positively have to have, do it. But as soon as you can get off them, I think it's always better to do it and go the natural route. You know, if you need bioidentical hormones, that's going to be much safer, much cleaner, and much more beneficial for your body down the road, for sure.
Because I remember when, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago, they're trying to come out with the male birth control pill, and it was a combo of progesterone and testosterone, because testosterone does have a slight suppressive effect on sperm production, but also progesterone would like totally tank a guy's libido.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrible.
So it's kind of like pointless anyway. But then people were getting into the argument of like, well, men should take the burden. And I'm like, all right, I'm not into this. I'm like, I'm like female power, but I'm not going to be over the top like in these discussions. So, so I found it interesting. But I know from, what I've researched and studied and learned is that a lot of the nutritional deficiencies that people end up with, in addition to some of the inability to put on muscle mass and drop body fat, because it suppresses the woman's ability to ovulate, right?
Yeah.
And then therefore testosterone and progesterone somewhat compete at the receptor site, or is that something like that where it suppresses testosterone production in women?
Yeah, so it can shut down things up in the brain that with the hormones called FSH and LH, which then travel down to the ovaries to tell your ovaries to make all those hormones. So that is being shut down. So everything stops being produced. The testosterone, the estrogen, the progesterone, everything's nada. So it can definitely, so you can have a lot of the negative effects of basically going into a testosterone deficiency state prematurely, which we talked about that earlier. That's the first one to drop. Well, now it's dropping even earlier. And some women are okay because they've got youth on their side and they're healthy otherwise, but others not so much. They start gaining some fat, they're getting tired, their libido hits the tank, and that, that's quality of life right there. So if there's some things you can do just to make some of those simple things better without any side effects, then that's a much better way to go. So yeah, you're definitely hijacking the system, by doing it that way. But again, there's a time and a place for it. But if you don't absolutely have to, if it's just out of convenience or whatever, then there are better options to do that. For sure.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say from the fitness side, the main point that I was trying to drive home on Friday was, we have one question that I'll say after, on Friday was that, regardless of what somebody is trying to do intervention wise, whether it's hormones, certain supplement, a certain training method, they still have to have enough health in order for their body to feel safe to do any of this. And there was this swing in the industry a few years ago where everyone was like, fuck cardio, I don't need to do cardio. Like, and I'm talking more aerobic work, but when I say aerobic, everyone thinks just steady state, but it could really be many modalities. And, realizing that you and I sitting here now, we are burning fat. We burn more fat the other 23 hours of the day that we're not in the gym. The hour in the gym, we do not burn as much fat. Right now, we are oxidizing fat. And that happens in the mitochondria, as everyone remembers, is the powerhouse of the cell. So our body, when it's in fight or flight mode, when somebody's stressed, which is pretty much 99% of the population, 99% of the time,
right,
it's going to ramp up the production and breakdown of carbohydrates. And then that's an increased stressed state. So I'm trying to say this the most simplistic form. And so then we can't get the manufacturing of hormones from the mitochondria, from those cells, because we don't have enough of them and we don't have enough of the healthy ones to be able to do that. And so things like cholesterol, instead of getting in the cell, get kicked out, and it's in our blood, and that's where the statins get given out like candy and all that. So, a lot of you guys look at, hormone replacement, or our clients will look at that as like the magic trick, but we really have to do everything else in our power to get them to adopt a healthier lifestyle before we even think about this. But it will help for sure, absolutely. But we just have to be reminded that we do have to get people healthy.
Oh, definitely. I mean, so many people that I've seen, it just because they're overstressed, like you said, they're working out too much, or they're not eating enough, or they're emotionally stressed, they're not breathing properly, and their stress levels are through the roof, cortisol's through the roof, and that affects all the hormones. So sometimes it's not a question of, well, can you give me this, and this? No, let's take away this, and everything else will self-correct. Kind of like healthy nutrition, healthy lifestyle. You fix that first, everything else will fall into place. My big two are the double S's, right? Sleep and stress. So you got to fix those, and otherwise nothing else is going to work. So
big time. So we've got A question from Crowbar Warrior. How do you bring down estrogen levels naturally, or you can't do so? Doc gave me an anastrozole and I'm scared to take it, as you should be. Well, I'm not scared. I just have a lot of negative effects on men, or I think he meant to say them. Could I lower my dose and see if it goes down? My opinion would be nix it, but I'll let the doctor answer that.
I think this gentleman reached out to me on Instagram a week ago. I think, if it's the same guy I'm thinking of. Yeah, I don't think you need the anastrozole. A lot of harmful effects. Clinical studies have shown that guys who were given anastrozole versus not down the road had more visceral fat, more osteoporosis, decreased libido. The list goes on. So it's not something you need. I think one guy I've had to give an occasional very low short-term dose, but if you dose them properly on the other hormones, you should not need an anastrozole. The benefits do not outweigh the negatives on that for sure. So if your estrogen level is high, that's a whole different issue. But I'm not really worried about estrogen levels. I've never had to manage it or lower it. And actually, it's better to be on the high side than the low side. A lot of the beneficial effects from T therapy come from estrogen, libido, burning off visceral fat, and more. So I'm happy to reach out to you if you want to reach out to me on Instagram. We could have, we could talk further. But yeah, don't take the anastrozole. I don't know how much testosterone you're taking, but it may be too much. But there's other ways to adjust that naturally without the anastrozole, even if you need to do that, which you probably don't with proper dosing. So happy.
Yeah, and high estrogen is so arbitrary. If your doctor's going off the labs and your estrogen's like 40 or 60, whatever. There's guys in the estrogen 100s that feel amazing. It's nothing to worry about. We're not going to say go off of it because we are not your doctors. However, the need for it is probably not what you think it is. So we've got more questions now rolling in. Will Cox, do you like guys doing one test shot once a week or a smaller dose daily? Similar question.
On here. Most of my guys are doing it 2 to 3 times a week. Some guys are doing it more than that, but occasionally I get someone who does it once a week. But it works more. It's more physiologic and more natural to dose it more frequently. Especially, it depends on your lifestyle, some of your other components in your blood that kind of determine how fast you metabolize and things like that. So.
Yeah, and none of this once a week, once every 2 weeks BS. We don't want that. It's not allowed in here.
Nope.
Christina, she's asking, hi, Christina. What would you recommend for non-hormonal birth control? Is an IUD really the way to go? What are your thoughts on that?
Like the Mirena, for example, it can be a very viable option. Definitely go for the low dose because even though they say it doesn't get systemically absorbed into your body, it does. So there's a low dose and a higher dose. So definitely opt for the lower dose, or God forbid we do the old school stuff, right? You wear protection, condoms, things of that nature. But that's probably the safest and most natural. But I guess it's not natural, but it won't mess up your system. Make that guy possible. Damn it.
No coitus interruptus.
Right.
AKA pull out and pray.
That's right. I love it. I was gonna say it, but you beat me to it.
And the copper IUD. What about that?
Yeah, same thing. Those can be effective, and they're much less risk of side effects. Although I've had a handful of patients, I know some of my colleagues have had some patients, they've had those for a long time, and they're starting to get a little wonky too on some of their other hormones and their symptoms. And again, it's a little bit artificial. So they had them removed, and they felt so much better. So if you don't want to do the condoms and the pull and pray, that'd probably be the best option for sure. But again, opt for the lowest dose possible.
And then I want to ask, why do doctors prescribe it when women are in their 40s and 50s still? How come they don't talk to them to get off of it? I've had women in their 40s and 50s, they're taking it. I'm like, why?
I know why. I don't. Yeah, exactly. I've seen patients like that too. I'm like, why are you on birth control pills? There's, I don't know. So
if you're married, have the guy get a vasectomy. Just
much easier. Much easier.
It's way easier. All right, they're talking to each other, so no other questions, I think, for tonight. But I think this was a great review in addition to some other deeper dives into some of the women's hormonal stuff. And also, we have some more ideas for topics for future talks, too. Because, the birth control is a big one, and it's so highly misunderstood that I know we're going to get hit with more questions regarding that, and then a lot of more, the menopausal stuff. And then we will continue to talk. We have to do one on just, the estrogen and the management of that for men, because that's still a very unknown deep dive one that we can go in.
For sure. Yeah, let's do it. Well, thank you, everyone. If you have any other
awesome.
Out to either one of us, happy to help.
Yes. All right, guys. Thank you for joining, and we shall see you soon. Bye.
Bye.